Well, we're doing Unit 6D, Part 1. And the first question has to do with statistical significance. And if you go to page 401, you'll see that a set of measurements or observations in a statistical study is said to be statistically significant if it's unlikely to have occurred by chance. And so, for one, you draw a card at random from a deck of cards and replace it. You repeat this 60 times and get a heart 13 times. Well, that is not unusual at all. So it's not statistically significant, and our choice is B. On the other hand, you draw a card at random from a deck of cards and replace it. You repeat this 100 times and get 40 aces. Well, that seems rather unusual, so that would be statistically significant. Next, we've got to find the margin of error. And to find margin of error, you go to page 404, and you'll notice in the boxed item it explains it. And the margin of error is 1 over the square root of n, where n is the size of the sample size. So during the questioning, 76 potential jury members, 31% said they had already formed an opinion as to the guilt. So to find the margin of error, we simply divide 1 by the square root of 76, and we get approximately 11.5%, which corresponds to selection B. Now for 4, we have to find the interval corresponding to that margin of error. And our sample size is 71, and 50% of the jurors claimed that they had already formed an opinion about as to the guilt of the defendant. So 1 over the square root of 71 is corresponds to 11.9%. And so the interval, 95% confidence interval, is going to be formed by subtracting 11.9% from 50% and adding 11.9% to 50%, and we get the values, or the interval, 38.1% to 61.9%, and that's selection A. Now for 5, we're talking about the null and alternate hypotheses, and that information is on the in the boxed item in page 406. And the null hypothesis corresponds to what is claimed, and the alternative is the claim that is accepted if the null hypothesis is rejected. So for our the case where the health insurer has determined that the reasonable and customary fee for a certain medical procedure is $1,200, that's the null hypothesis. The fee is $1,200. They suspect that the average fee charged by one particular clinic for this procedure is higher than $1,200. That's the alternate hypothesis, greater than $1,200. The insurer wants to perform the hypothesis test to determine whether the suspicion is correct. Well, we have to choose the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis, and that's choice C. And we'll stop here and do part 2.